All right, welcome back to the podcast, y'all. Dan, I want to start us off with a potentially controversial one. At least it could get us into controversial waters. But what movie can you quote start to finish?
Toy Story.
Toy Story?
Oh, man.
You are a toy!
You're a sad, strange little man. I pity you. Farewell.
Okay, fair.
Well, I've got a tie, and so I've got my church answer.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm with my church friends, and then I've got my other answer. So it would
Forget the
actually
church
be a-
friends. I want the other answer.
It would actually be a series because it's The Chosen, and it's the
Okay.
it's the only version of the Bible that has a lot of artistic license, which I take. And so I've memorized a bunch of the lines plus the artistic take on those. But if we were not with the Sunday school class, it would be Nacho Libre,
Oh, there you go.
because
That's a good one.
because the guy, his partner, keeps asking him, Nacho, why do we never win? And he says, we don't win because you don't believe. He says, Nacho, it doesn't work like that. It does.
Yeah, that's kind of right there with like Princess Bride and those kind of it fits into that. Todd, what about you?
I'm going to have to go old school on you and go Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, there you go.
Like in junior high, I've got three little brothers.
Spam.
I don't think that word means what you think it means. My brothers would quote it nonstop, and I was home one night having pizza. I don't know why. I was all by myself. I'm like, I think this is Monty Python, but this is the dumbest movie ever. And then a little bit later, I start laughing along with it, and by the end of it, I'm like laughing out loud all by myself, going, "What in the world?" But the quoting of that one afterwards is much more fun.
So Todd, when you start getting British humor, you might be too far gone. So
That's also valid.
The therapist. That's one of their questions they ask up front to make sure. Can I help you?
Out of therapy for those reasons, guys. You finally got it out of me. Fine. Yeah, we got. No, Monty Python, absolutely best.
Yeah, we've been able to have a lot of good friends on the podcast already, but Wade McGuinn is one of my favorite people, and so Wade, having you on the podcast and just sharing the story of McGuinn Homes is going to be a real blessing to a whole lot of people. For our listeners that have no idea, which I can't imagine who they would be, but who would have no idea who Wade McGuinn is, give us a quick introduction, and then we'll jump in from there.
Wow. So a friend of mine told me the other day, a friend and mentor, I won't call any names out. I'll just say the Colonel. How about that?
Okay, I know who we're talking about.
He said, I've decided you're a force to be reckoned with.
Oh,
so I've been stewing on that a little bit to figure out what it means. But I do think, 40 years ago, last August, God called me and my wife to start a construction company, but I thought I was supposed to be in seminary. And so we've just been on this journey, trying to figure out whether God's got a sense of humor, he had a plan. And I went to a annual meeting this morning with the company, and we've got almost 100 employees, and the building was full and the parking lot was full. And I walked in and I debriefed a little while ago with the CEO, and I said, when I pulled in and I saw all the late model cars, and I went in and everybody was having breakfast, it's overwhelming the amount of responsibility, but also what we've been called to shepherd. And so it kind of just sums up really who we are, what we do. We started building one house at a time and then two houses at a time. And now we build 3 houses a day, every day of the year.
yeah.
And so we started 1,200 houses this year. And so God allowed us to have a big circle of influence, and it's been a great mission field, and it's been a journey. And the cool thing about our business and me is that the fact that I'm still here and still running it proves that God is on the throne. So there's no faith required. So,
And I just want to pick on you. You still got your name tag on because we were riffing before we started recording. I'd love to hear some more of that story about where you were at this morning and why you got a name tag on.
So this is really good because when you get to a certain age where I was talking to my son the other day, who's the division president in Greenville, and I said, Kelly, I said, I never believed, you never think in advance that one day you would have a white beard and white hair and you'd be talking to a gray-haired son and we would be having eternal conversations. And it's really interesting because, you get to the point in your life where you really do understand that you leave Earth at some point, and what you leave behind matters, and you'll be held accountable to it. And so, but it also gives people a lot of license to say whatever they want to you. So they told me this morning that the reason I had on my name tag was so me and my wife would both remember who I am. But I'll tell you a great God, and I'll tell you a great story about God and country. So we had opening prayer and pledge this morning for the meeting, and then I left the company meeting and went to the State House to a meeting before a subcommittee hearing on regulations that affect our industry, and we had prayer and we had pledge. And as I finished up my speech over at the State House this morning, I said, think about a country that at 11:30 a.m. I've been to two meetings. A businessman with a jacket on has been to two meetings that opened up with the pledge and prayer. And I mean, America is awesome,
That's
right?
cool.
And our freedom of religion is even so impactful, when it's really stewarded well and people aren't,
Yeah.
aren't discounted because of it.
Yeah. I know the 40-year journey. I think if someone had asked me about McGuinn Homes, you guys are a 40-year overnight success. I mean, because in some ways there's been, you mentioned it. You started out onesie twosies. Today, 1,200 starts, the largest privately held home builder in South Carolina as far as volume of homes built. And there's been a lot of ups and downs in that journey. I know, go back to GFC, right? 2008, the great financial crisis.
Right.
How did that impact even today, Wade? How you're leading, how you perceive and see things, not only in the market and in the industry, but from a spiritual standpoint as well.
Man, I think that's 29 questions, but let me see if I can unwrap it a little bit. So,
You're welcome.
One, I think the biggest thing is that we were called. And so, with everything that happened over the business, we never really felt like the business was the most important thing. And so, as a matter of fact, my wife told me probably 25 years ago, we were probably 15 years into the company, and she could see, I got a new word this year, it's called strive. I think it's going to be my word for 25, but she could see that I was striving for success in business. And we were having she's been, really kept me grounded. Her, we're opposites. And I'm a visionary way out there, always ready for the next thing. And she was an accountant before she retired. And she's, 1 and 1 is 2, give her a cubicle with a big project and she's safe. And so, but she looked at me and she said, Wade, you will never, ever be known for having a building company. You just need to get a hold of that. And it was prophecy, I guess, in a way that any time that we that we look past our calling, we would get lost in the wilderness a little bit, and a lot of people, maybe the listeners don't know this, but the distance that the Israelites traveled from being released from the Egyptians to go to the Promised Land is an 11-day journey. A lot of people don't realize that, but geographically, it's an 11-day walk. It took them 40 years to get there. And the reason is the same thing we're talking about here is people lose their way. So talking about the GFC and connecting it with what I just said, Dan, I just finished, How the Mighty Fall. And it's a trick book because it's not about it is not about how the mighty fall. It's how the called survive. That's what the name of the book ought to be. And they get to a point between stage 3 and stage 4 of decline in this book, and they talk about the burning platform, which the author was really referring to the GFC, like people that led from a burning platform. And man, I got that. Could you imagine Moses going to, going to the king of Egypt and demanding the release of his people? Hey, listen, that defines burning platform, right? But for leaders who have been in really, really difficult situations, um, that burning platform pushes you back to hope. And one of the senators asked me this morning. He said, he asked me the 40-year question. He said, how did you guys have hope after 40 years? And I said, my signature on my email says what you put your hope in will determine how long your hope lasts. I told him that's my signature on everything I send out. And so that's really what the answer is to. I said, that's the reason we're a great country. That's the reason we've survived war, feast, famine, attack and everything else, because we believe in, our American principles and we believe in our Christian values. And it leads us. And we get a leader that is called, and it wasn't Moses' idea to leave Israel. He didn't even think he was a good speaker, right? I mean, his go-to out on that deal was, hey, you kind of got the wrong guy. Like, a leader's got to have a big voice. And he says, no, a leader just needs to be called. And so I think just making, to people that are out there and listen to the podcast who may be wondering about that, I'll kind of tie a bow on this piece of it with something that I learned from Bob Goff last summer. So it's kind of funny. I tell people I went camping last summer with Bob Goff, and if that wasn't a God thing, there wasn't a thing, because I was not a Bob Goff fan, number one, and I'm not a fan of fan clubs, number two. And so all these guys were going on this big outdoor journey. It was a 700-mile cross country Can-Am four-wheel drive across the desert through Zion and Bryce. And Bob was hired a company to lead it. But what we didn't know till we got there is he was doing fireside in the morning and night chats with the group, and he was just really giving people a lot of wisdom. As now I am a Bob fan. And he came out one morning. I was about 5:30 in the morning. I was sitting down by a river having a cup of coffee. And he came out and he said, tell me about you, Wade. And I said, I'm at this crazy point in my life where people want to have coffee with me. They'll call and they'll say, hey, Wade, let's have a cup of coffee. Let's go to breakfast. And what they're really saying is, I need some advice, right? I need some wisdom. And they're looking at me, God help them, and wanting me to figure that out. And over the last 3 or 4 years, I've really determined that what was happening was people were wanting me to approve of what they've already decided to do. And so we would go and we would have these chats, but they had predetermined, what the outcome was. They weren't seeking wisdom, because you got to listen, right, to get wisdom. And so Bob looked at me and said, that used to happen to me, Wade. And he always called himself Little Bobby. And he goes like this, I'll tell you what Little Bobby would do. He said, when people invite me out, if they don't take notes, we never go out again, ever. He said, they're off my list. I don't even answer their calls anymore. And he said, I would suggest you do the same thing. And I looked up at those senators today, and about 5 out of about 12 of them was taking notes. And I stopped and I told them that story about Bob. And I said, I really want to thank the 5 guys that are taking notes, because we can all learn so much from each other, right?
Yeah.
But the first thing in learning and understanding and survival is listening, right? And so, we've listened. We've gotten it wrong a lot. Don't get me wrong. As you know, we've been broke twice, but we never quit. And we led from a burning platform during the GFC, and we are blessed. And Dan, from our own personal experience, I don't believe in a prosperity gospel in any way, shape, or form, because I've had friends that are just way better people and Christians than I am, but they've suffered significant loss in their life, and it just doesn't work that way. It's not a value system. If I do, you do. But if God calls you, and He doesn't call everybody, just like He doesn't heal everybody, right? And we can't decide who God chooses to use to glorify Himself. But it's pretty cool when you get the opportunity to serve in that seat, and you get to lead from that position, no matter how messed up you are. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's it.
No, wait. I want to go back to something you said, and actually, let's do this. I want to brainstorm with you. So I'm sitting down for coffee. I got my notes out, so you're letting me pay attention. But I'm not paying attention or listening to, I want you to rubber stamp my idea, and you think it's a terrible idea. Let's say I'm a new guy in the home build space and I'm just doing all things wrong. What's your response to me to help get me see that I might need a little bit different strategy or I'm off? What do you do?
Man, that's good. Let me help me understand the question a little better. So does that mean I quickly get the idea that the guy's not listening?
He's not listening. The idea is bad, and he just wants you to rubber stamp it. We're sitting over
Yeah,
coffee. This is my idea. The whole time I'm pitching my idea, you're going, that is not going to work out. I'm like, all right, Wade, so this is a good idea, right? And I'm giving you leading
yeah.
questions, want you to just basically stamp it.
So, so I get a lot of wisdom in my life from other people, and I've got 4 or 5 people that are key people that speak into my life. Dan happens to be one of them. And that proves that God's on the throne too, by the way. And so,
Not wrong.
No truer statement has been made all day.
so he's using rocks every day, right, Dan?
Amen. Amen.
So, but Dan helped me with something that really, like, if I would, I really would have been a force to be reckoned with if I'd have known this 30 years ago. But sometimes people need to feel the full weight of grace. They need to be allowed to fail. And I don't know why it's so, I don't know why it's so easy, Todd, for us to see it in the recovery community that people got to get to the bottom before they can recover, and that every day is a new day and a great day, like they celebrate the recovery community. And I've never been through the recovery community, thank God, but I have a number of friends that have, and they just get it so much better than we do. So people, whether they're employees or friends or associates or people seeking advice, uh, if you're not agreeing with them, then So I have a story behind everything. So let me tell you this, and it'll give some clarification. So what does it mean to sit in the full weight of grace, right? And it could be something like, okay, if you rob a bank and you're saved, and then you get to jail and you're saved again, you're not getting out. You're still going to serve 5 years, right? That's called the full weight of grace. The jail's not going to fall open. So the same thing, if you have infidelity in your marriage and it wrecks your marriage, it doesn't mean that you're not saved anymore. It's just you're paying the full weight of grace for God still loves you, still accepts you, He forgives you, all these things. But I think it's really best. I'm an avid reader, and I really love a book called Necessary Endings by Dr. Cloud.
Yeah.
And in that book, it's really interesting because he just categorizes 3 kinds of people: good, fools, and evil. And he gets good and evil over with pretty quick, as he said, you don't have to take your shoes off to count the number of good people you'll meet in your life. Like, it's rare. It's like a diamond or gold, right? Like, man, that guy is just good. Like, my original mentor is a guy named Ray Stoudemire. He taught me the real estate business in the late 70s. And I'm going to go visit him tomorrow. He's 86 or 7 years old now, and failing health, and but the guy just has the aroma of Christ. He's just a good guy. And then bad guys, which I had a conversation with our attorneys this morning. Dr. Clyde gets to it pretty quick, right? He said, you either call a lawyer or call the police. So if somebody really is bad, and here's how he defines it, they have evil in their heart. So I asked the attorneys on the phone this morning, I said, they're saying, well, the guy's kind of not breaking the law, so give us more context. And I said, the man has evil in his heart. His intent is to harm us. And so if you don't agree with that, then frankly, I've got the wrong law firm. So I need to be in line. We need to be aligned with what I'm trying to tell you. If you put him on a witness stand and get him to say that he doesn't have evil intent in his heart against us, then he can just perjure himself, and that's fine. The law allows for that. But the only reason he's doing what he's doing is to cause us harm, period. He may be using it within the legal guidelines or getting into gray areas, but he's got evil intent. And so we need to deal with that by either having him arrested or filing a lawsuit and letting him spend $20,000 or $30,000 to figure out whether he's innocent or guilty, and he wants to move forward with harming us. And so, but the important thing about this question is, what about everybody else? That just leaves all of us as fools, which includes Dan, Wade, and Todd, right? And so I don't want to be a fool. And I assume you guys don't want to be fooled. You don't want to be categorized as a fool. So Dr. Cloud does a good job. He said, that's where the light comes in. So when you have people around you that can shine the light on you, a boss, a mentor, a wife, a friend, an associate,
Scripture, God's word.
God's word, and they shine the light, then fools can only react one of two ways. They can either move out of the light or adjust the light, he calls it, or step into the light. And when somebody steps into the light, they go, so this guy I'm having coffee with goes, man, I didn't think about that, Wade. So I'm not sure I agree with that, but I'm really going to go home and pray through that and add that to my plan or subtract that from my plan, or maybe I should wait, or maybe I should be more capitalized, whatever the thing is. And ultimately, um, is it a good Christian example? So businesses, BAM, business as a mission, is a testimony, right? And it's not a testimony of success or failure ever, because there's plenty of great businesses that fail that are owned by Christian owners who are operating the businesses as BAM, right? But how they handle all of it, success and failure, how they conduct themselves on a daily basis with their trade partners, vendors, and employees, it all matters, right? And so sometimes that sitting in the weight of their own grace means like they're just adjusting the light. And then Dr. Cloud goes on to say that, you bring them in again. So we just get through breakfast, and then I usually wait. If I don't hear from them, which I'm not going to because they know I didn't agree with them, then I'll call them in about 6 or 8 weeks. We'll have breakfast again. I say, hey, can I buy you breakfast? I've never had anybody say no. I've had them hesitate. And then go to breakfast and say, how did it all work out, man? Tell me what's going on. Bring me up to speed.
Yeah.
Bam, 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 and I'm going like, so is there any way that I can help you? What can I do for you? I'd be glad to pray for you. I have been praying for you. So, what's next? So,
It's kind of a great transition, Wade, into, thanks to the gray hair, right? People and want to come to ask for advice, counsel, wisdom. And we get to do that on a personal level, but that's taken on a whole nother level of importance at McGuinn Homes, of how you guys live out faith, live out the gospel through the business. And I know this, you've always been generous, right? And giving from the business, but that has taken on another level in the last several years. Talk to us a little bit about that journey, and what God has invited you guys into as far as really leaning into business as ministry at McGuinn.
wow. And this is a place, no infomercial or anything like that, but we did a lot of things right, over the years. We thought was right, at least. And we really believed that we were, most days following God's will. And even when we suffered, and lost everything twice, we still believe that there was some kind of plan. God makes beauty from ashes, and we really leaned into hope and all those things. But when we started getting involved with other BAMs, and it started out originally not with Dan, but it started out with Center for Global Strategy. And we were deploying missionaries all over the world by using our businesses to start small businesses in the 1040 window that we could export jobs from the U.S. who were missionaries, but they had work visa passports. And the business that we started there, Asia Wood Source in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, that I started, got after the first couple of years, another guy came along that had way more resources than I did and way smarter than me, and he took it over and turned it into a durable goods manufacturing business for the medical industry. He already had a plant in China, but he decided to become part of Global Strategies. And I thought, my gosh, man, this is at every level. I mean, this is huge. And here it is, like 16 years later or 18 years later, there's 1,100 people going to a free Christian church in a communist country in downtown Ho Chi Minh City every Sunday. And that was, from that effort.
Mm-hmm.
But on a way more granular level, when we got invited into C12, we would never thought about having chaplains on staff. Like it just didn't occur to us. And then when that got presented at one of the meetings, we're like, why are we doing that? That's crazy. And then they come in and we give them a scorecard just like we do everybody else in the company. They've got metrics, they've got scorecards, they've got KIPs, whatever. I mean, we run everything like a business, and numbers matter. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have fed 5,000, and he would have fed 100. So we get those reports, and man, we've got corporate chaplains that are doing weddings, funerals, showing up at the hospital in the middle of the night, and man, our folks were completely underserved in terms of just one-on-one ministry. Right? They did not have a pastor. It's people that were not believers. They just weren't connected to a believer group. And what a great introductory into a people group than a guy that looks like you and acts like you, because they're corporate chaplains for construction companies, and these guys look like construction workers. And they come out with their yellow safety gear on, and their hair's a little longer than it should be, and they got a beard and all that stuff, and they just blend in, and they got a big cross on their back that says chaplain, and people flag them down. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example. And Dan knows of a lot of stuff that we plugged in. So three of us went through like 3 years of C12. We handed it down one, and I think at least one of our guys has handed it down one more. So I think we have a total of 12. Since C12 started for us, we've had 12 company individuals. So once a month, we have a 1 hour roundup on C12 where we do a Teams call with the 12 people that have been involved, previously involved, and currently involved. We go over the material that they did for that month and how we can implement nuggets from each month's stuff into the company. And it's so infectious. And it keeps, I said earlier, that word alignment is everything, right? It keeps us in alignment, understanding as I'm getting ready to, hopefully retire one day, that people will stay on task, stay on mission. And it's not about me or what my goal or visionary is for the BAM, but it's just culture.
So I got to tell this story, Todd. I'm going to tell on Wade. I'm in Dallas in a meeting, and my phone, I look down and Wade's calling me. And so I take the call, step out of the meeting. He says, hey man, I just want to let you know, we've decided that we've just been doing ministry as a bolt-on. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to make ministry a core part of our business. So what we're going to do is we're going to hire a chief spiritual officer who's going to come in at the C-level table. They're going to be just as important as the financial officer, as the HR officer. And so we're going to have a chief spiritual officer. And here I am. This was at a C12 meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never heard of anybody doing that. What does that job description look like? And I only say that to say, when you move from ministry as a bolt-on to now ministry is the core of everything we do. What was that journey like, Wade? How did you go?
How the rest of the C-suite staff responded when you pitched that idea the first time?
Oh man, it was like the light got shined on us, and everybody stepped into it. So it was another one of those. It was literally an epiphany. It's like we were struggling coming into the 26 planning season because we have a foundation. We have a group in the company called Impact. We have a group in the company called Cares. And so we had all these ministries going on in the company, and Todd, you'll love this. They became competitive. It's like, and people are just, if you've got great people, that competitive nature, just like sports or anything else, right? It's what drives everything, and you want them competitive. And I was like, God, how can we be like? Well, I'm on Impact. I'm on Cares. Well, I work for the foundation. And then somebody goes like, what does the foundation do? Like, and or
losers.
There's the end of the hall anyway. Don't worry about it. Right. And so actually, like all great, wisdom and epiphanies, I had seen the video probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago about Weldon Field in Birmingham. I don't know if you know who they are, but they're like a $5 billion, they're essentially a big financial organization, but they do construction. They do apartments, multifamily, and development work. They're kind of a step up from us in terms of the big development tree and construction. And they're a big firm, and the guy that's running that firm, second generation, he had the same epiphany. Like his dad really did a great job of business's ministry, but it was always like the stepchild. I called it bolt on. Like we did it great. Nothing. I don't regret anything we did. We did it really really well.
Mhm.
But we were a home building company and we had ministry. Bolted onto it, and God just spoke clear as a bell, and He said, like, you are a ministry company that builds houses, not a home building company that does ministry. And I went back and watched that video, and his epiphany happened in '08, by the way, from a burning platform. They can highly capitalized second generation company. They survived, and they had good assets. But he said, and I tell you what was cool as I was reading at the time about that Solomon wrote Psalms and Ecclesiastes. And he said, so here they had been a second generation, just really wealthy family, two families, and done really, really well, been super generous, bam, right? But coming out of '08, he said, we just, why did we do it the first time? Like, was it just for more? And so he got his whole team together and they said, no, we're gonna hire he's the one that came with that chief spiritual officer or he's the one that gave me the idea. He said, we hired somebody C-suite level. We budgeted 250 grand for overhead for payroll, gave them office space, and it's core what we do. And here's what really got me. And this is the only part I really repented on. Honestly, I missed it. And I do have a little bit regret about it, and I don't have much regret in my life, but I do regret this. We never thought about serving our top line revenue. So our new home buyers, the people that were creating our top line revenue was our new home buyers. We never went back and created community for those people. And I don't know how we missed it. And so when I'm watching the Weldon Field video, they build apartments. They have apartment life experience team members who go back. They give them a free apartment. They live there, and they build community at each one of the 300 unit apartment complex. It's their job to build community. So they have cookouts, pizza night, blow ups, and then sooner or later, Bible study, small groups. But from the ground up, you don't want to come, don't come. They have multicultural meetings depending on who's living in the apartments. Like, hey, we've got these Hindis living over here. We got some, living over here. Let's all get together and eat something that we all do eat together and sit down and introduce our kids. And so people in their apartment complexes, people are outside. Like they're building community. And I was like, how did we miss that? So the whole idea of having a customer experience where a customer community experience, but building a customer experience, getting people out of their houses into community and being a witness for the Lord and being that aroma of Christ and never knocking on a door for spiritual laws, handing out Bibles. It's none of that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with any of that at all. I'm not criticizing. It's just not the approach. The approach is just building community and the great process of how love comes out of that. So we since then we had a meeting with them with their whole C-suite and the adjacent team with our team. They gave us a lot of good ideas. We sent our team out to Beedenbaugh a few weeks ago, and they spent a whole week out there being mentored by their team, and they're all full of
It's another
ideas.
home builder in Lubbock, Texas, for folks that are wondering.
Yeah. And you'd have to look up Beedenbaugh communities, just see what they're doing, but they're just absolutely fascinating group of people. I was invited out to the 2000. Well, it's always in January, so it was 2025. It was this year. They have the second largest convention in the U.S., but it's a home builder convention in Vegas, and Hope International started doing a prayer breakfast, International Home Builder Prayer Breakfast on the second morning, and they invited me to be one of the speakers. But I wasn't the keynote speaker. Janine Roach was so we had to go the night before and practice. And then it was, of course, early event the next morning with breakfast. And we had to go an hour before and practice again. And I got to know Janine, just barely get to know her. And she's glowing. Like, she's the most beautiful person I ever met. She is attractive, very, very nice lady, but I mean, she's just beautiful. And she got up on stage and just did her testimony and said, both Beedenbaughs passed away about 3 years apart. One was 85, and the son that took it over right after his dad died found out he had colon cancer. And he thought he had about 3 months to live. She's giving this testimony on national stage. And she said, he calls her in and he said, I'm not going to survive much longer. And the Lord told me to make you CEO of the company. And she said, I can't do that. And he said, I know, right? I agree with you. You can't. He said, and if it was my idea, your idea, there's no way you'd be CEO. But this is what the Lord has, told us to do. So he died 3 days later.
Wow.
Dang.
And she became CEO of the company. That was 7 years ago. They're killing it. They're an ESOP now. There's no Beedenbaughs alive. Did you? I don't know if you knew that, Dan.
No, I
There's no
didn't.
surviving Beedenbaughs. So they're an ESOP, and Janine is still the leader there. And she says, "I just get up and do what the Lord tells me to do every day." The whole their whole witness, their whole testimony. She's been there 19 years. Best part of the story I haven't told you yet. The first 9 years she worked there, she wasn't a believer. She got saved at Beedenbaugh Homes. Why? Because the thing that they teach at Kingdom to Work at their office, what we were there doing, is the main thing they teach is discipling your employees. That's your number one. If you are a BAM, your number one goal is discipling your employees. And it has to be intentional, and there has to be a plan, and there has to be time. And it's really, really powerful.
Wade, walk through that. So let's say we've got a listener who's sitting there going, yep, I want to do it. Disciple my employees. Sweet. What does that look like?
So a week's worth of training at Beedenbaugh, because it is a very involved plan. But if I was going to sum it all up, which is really interesting, because when Jesus shows up on the scene, all the great Jewish leaders ask him, "Can you sum up the whole Old Testament for us?" And he said, "Yeah, love your neighbor." That's it. So if I was going to sum up what they do is intentional one-on-ones once a week. And that's step one. That's big. That's a big time commitment. And that is a big personal commitment. Personal one-on-ones with your team. So if you got 5 people on your team, you're going to have 5 1-hour one-on-ones a week. And you're going to learn about them, their family, their kids, their grandkids, their illnesses, their wins, their woes, all those things. And yeah, that seems real hard to me, honestly. That's a big hill to climb just to get started. Huge hill to climb. And I would imagine, the older you get, the more you realize what real time frames are. The first time I took a personality test, and a business personality test, the guy came in to review him with us, and his first thing he said is, "You set unreasonable goals for others."
And everybody in the room's going, he had to take a test to figure that out?
Yeah. It's like so anyway, I think it would, honestly, I think it would take you a year or two to ramp that up. If you're really going to get serious about that, it would take, start with 1 or 2 and work your way up and get those guys mentoring the ones that below them, or those girls mentoring the ones below them. And I call it, 3, 2, 1, 12, 3, 1. So Jesus had 12, 3 were his favorite, but that old fast runner John was the one he loved. We all ran to the tomb. I got there first.
Yep. That's awesome. So intentional one-on-ones, weekly with a plan, and then putting some time to it, tossed on the calendar. But that doesn't have to be overthought, right? I can just start doing that now, have my right people pouring into. And by the way, if you have more than 5 direct reports, might want to rethink that anyway, right? Some organizational structure might need to change, but it's making a decision, committing to it, and building up some logical steps is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
I got to put this in here with one of the division presidents at McGuinn. And in trying to do this, I mean, it's like trip, stagger, fall, right?
Right.
And so he goes to his direct reports and basically, hey, I need to set up an hour, a week with you. And they're all looking at him like, why? And he's like, I just need you to do this. And he figured something out, though. This was really good. He finally went back to him and says, hey, listen, I need you to do this because I need your help. I got some areas that I'm wanting to grow in. And I think, having conversations with you about that, for just speaking into those spaces for me, places of accountability, just walking that together.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, yeah. By the way, one of his people that have worked with him for a long time says, oh, it's going to take longer than an hour. I mean, we can't get it done in an hour. I mean, and she was the first one who was like, why? Why
am I doing this?
Why So the beauty of it is when we understand we're not really doing these one-on-ones just because those people need to be discipled. We're doing it because we need to be discipled. And anyone who's ever been in a discipleship relationship knows we get more from it than the person who's quote unquote the disciplee.
Yes.
So that posture of humility is a great way to walk into that from a real practical standpoint.
Yeah.
Good word.
Always reciprocity.
So Todd, we went ahead and made it, because we do rocks and to-dos and all those things here. We IDS, we do all the EOS stuff, but we made a rock for the first quarter for everybody on the executive team, presidents up to the C-suite, to find their number two. That's a rock. And if you don't have a number two, then you got a problem. And so you need to solve it. You got a whole quarter to solve it. And then when you start doing your one-on-one with your number two, then that's our start. So the catalyst to get this thing primed, the pump primed, to get it working, everybody needs a number two. People
That
hesitate
also
on
helps
number.
you get to why we're doing this thing. Yeah.
And then it's both ways, because now it's business and ministry, right? I've got to have a number two. What if I'm out sick? Like one of our core values is my least favorite core value is fairness. Because I said, you've never had kids or been married if you believe there's fair. So, because people want to argue it like academically. And I said, we can argue academically all day on fair, but let's just keep it simple. If you've got a kid or a wife, their idea of fair and your idea of fair is about a 180. Okay. So, I can't have these shoes. That's not fair. We're not going to Disney. That's not fair.
So in defense of Wade's team, they do embrace fairness. They've actually called it now the pursuit of fairness.
Yeah.
And really, if you're a Stephen Covey guy, it's basically win-win. Right. That's really what it comes down to. If it's a win for me and a loss for you, that does not work.
So
I want to go back to just the succession part of that a second, because you illustrated this guy that had cancer and 3 days later assigns the new CEO, right? Not to do the scare tactic, you might die, but the donut truck or whatever might hit you. So there is a need for duplication, getting the succession planning going, but having that as hey, I need to have every duplication along the way. That's a great reason why we need to set up these one-on-ones. So then I want to do these one-on-ones then. What's your formula for what I need to do in those one-on-ones? Just schedule the meeting, see what happens. Do you have some conversation topics? How structured do you do with those?
Completely unstructured. So, it's just unpacking each other's lives. Get to know the person. And if you're praying before, during, and after, then, God's going to reveal what's going to come out of that meeting, right? And if you're not a believer, that might seem a little hokey or whatever. But if you're not a believer and you start seeing fruit, that's where discipleship comes in. Like, you know what? I'm not a believer, but this is really helping me. This is improving my life. Or I really believe they're investing in me now that I'm going someplace.
That's how the CEO after 9 years came to know Jesus.
Yeah. They just loved her into it. And the other beautiful part of the story is her husband was an atheist, and she went home, and 2 years later he got saved because she brought Jesus home, and they got 3 kids who love the Lord.
How about that?
Yeah, because she got loved at work. And I love what they say is so I kept asking the guys, well, tell me about their home building company. And they said, we don't know anything about it. I said, you guys were out there a week. Like, what's the secret sauce? Because they're like number 14 in the U.S. home builder, privately held home builder. I said, like, what are they doing? I said, we asked them about it, and they just said, this is actually what they said. Great people build great houses. So we only invest in people, and everything else takes care of itself from there. And here's the difference between me, an author, a book, C12, whatever. They live it out every day. They actually do that. And to me, honestly, Todd, Dan, it scares me. That kind of lack of control. This is where I'm weak. And Dan, you know my weaknesses, right? Don't tell them what my two bad habits are. So
They can call Janet. She can tell them.
yeah, yeah. So Todd, my accountability group, I used to be a rodeo champ, liar, and manipulator. So and I'll tell you why, because I came out of sales, so I had a reason. And I came out of sales before the internet, so we could actually tell anybody anything back in the old days. You know, they had no
Right.
way
Now
to.
he can fact check you a little
Yeah,
quicker,
yeah.
especially
They
with
used to have
AI
to.
now.
They'd have to go home and get the Encyclopedia Britannica before. Now they can just look on their phone and find out it's not the truth, right? So anyway, yeah. But I mean, watching somebody live that out in a $450 million company, 485 employees they have at Beedenbaugh. So this isn't like a guy with 12 employees, you know what I'm saying, in a small town. This is the real deal. This is Texas. This is 485 employees. And this is, if you don't like it, get off the bus, but we're going to love you into submission. And we're going to build great houses. And they are literally, not figuratively, literally twice as profitable as we are per unit. Dan.
That's the beauty of that, Wade. And we keep Todd and I get to have these conversations with people like you, different industries, different places across the country. If there's one common thread that I can pull, is this: it's amazing how doing ministry and loving your people equates to really great business.
It's
We're better.
crazy.
We're more profitable. There's less friction. It's just better. It's kind of like a friend of Wade and I have a mutual friend whose dad was afraid that he was a part of this small group that was like a cult. That's what he thought. His dad thought it
He
was a
thought we
cult.
were a cult. Yeah, yeah.
And he literally came from Pennsylvania down here to make sure his son was okay. And his dad, who's an atheist, is saying, "Son, this doesn't make sense." Da da da. And the guy just said this: "Dad, my life's just better with Jesus.
Amen. Yeah.
My life is just better with Jesus." You know what? Our businesses are just better with Jesus. And it's just never ceases to amaze me. It's so counterintuitive for many of us because we're type A, we're driven, we're wanting to, we're going to make something happen. And God just sits back. You talked about the allowing us to bear the full weight of grace, the full weight of the consequences of our choices.
Yeah.
God will sit back and let us run this thing into the ground. And then he'll be right there with us to pick up the pieces and to basically to bury those pieces and say those pieces didn't work anyway. It's been so fun to have a front row seat to watch you and Nate, the rest of your leadership team, as that keeps getting built out. You know, Wade, one of the things it's interesting is you're talking about Beedenbaugh, and they're up, twice the size of you, but there are others that are listening to this and they're like, I could never hire a chief spiritual officer. What are you talking about? What if you were to look at someone who says, Wade, I want to do business as ministry. That's my heart, but I don't even know where to start. What's some wisdom on the right place to start?
Oh man. Well, this again, what I love about the recovery community is that you got to surrender. And if you're not willing to do that, then you need to wait it out. And if you really, really be careful what you pray for, right? And that's another just watchword. If God's calling you and you're resisting, which everybody called knows when they're resisting, even when God called you to do something simple like pray for somebody right there, or to stop by and see somebody, or walk away from a bad conversation, whatever, and people know the Holy Spirit's present in that and they ignore it. It's like you're just not ready. And honestly, it's like some people that we gave advice to over the time. They got to hit bottom. So in one of the stories, which is a good story, a guy called me and he wanted to borrow $200,000. It ended up at breakfast. He wanted to borrow $200,000 to save his business, and I laughed, unfortunately, and he said, "Well, why is that funny?" And I said, "You've been in business 18 years, right? You should own your house. You should own your car. You should have $1 million in the bank. You should have twice as many as employees. If you were doing what you were good at after 18 years, you wouldn't need $200,000 because you're just going to throw it away. It's not going to save you because you're not a businessman. And he looked at me and I said, you're probably the best salesman I've ever met in my entire life. If you would have stayed in your lane, you'd be laying on a beach in the Bahamas right now with your wife. But you want to be something you're not. And it's a waste of money. And, well, I've got a guy that's going to loan me the money. It's a higher rate. I thought I could get a lower rate, whatever. And then a year later, guess what? He hit bottom. And we had breakfast again. And he said, thanks. Like really, I know I didn't listen. And just needed to go that way and figure it out. And he's full-time sales, making 3 times what he's made a year, ever, because he's finally back relaxed doing what he's like. I mean, this guy's gifted. You'd buy something even if you didn't need it. And so, that's part of the story is there is 2 kinds of people, people that need to hit the bottom to hear. And there's people that you can bring the bottom up to them. Mm-hmm. We had one at Bible study the other night, and then, and I'm going to wind down a little bit because I've got another call at 2 if that's okay with you guys. But, we had one the other night, and a guy in our Bible study was lamenting about a sin. And I love the word lament because we don't use it.
Right.
But it is a right and proper thing to do, right? But there's a time to lament, and then you move on, right?
Yeah.
And he was lamenting about it as though it just hit that story of the Egyptians with me again. Like, at least we had meat in Egypt. They killed all your relatives and you got beat every day for barbecue. That's what we're trading it for. And so the guy's telling this story. And one of the guys out of the recovery community that happens to be in our Bible study, medical sales guy, super sharp guy, he just looks at he said, would you stop for a minute? And there's like 10 or 12 guys in my house. He said, I want you to just stop. And Dan, you've done some pretty dramatic ones when we were in group together, but this guy did it, Dan. He really did. He said, stop. He said, now take a second, play that reel, that tape all the way to the end and tell us how that ends. And the guy started crying. And he said,
the bottom up to him.
He just brought the bottom up to him. Like, man, don't, and we need each other to do that. That's where community comes in and mentorship comes in and one-on-ones come in, is hopefully helping bring the bottom up to people and they can see there's a better way.
Yeah. Wade, before you get off, something that we love to do is just ask our guests to pray over our listeners. There's some listeners that they're still hanging on here because they're trying to figure out what a 40-year overnight success looks like. And there's any number of pieces out of this conversation that they may be grappling with. Would you just pray God's wisdom and blessing over those individuals as they're wrestling through? What does it look like to surrender? Giving their business to Him, giving their life to Him, their kids to Him, their reputation to Him, whatever the case might be that they're wrestling with. Would you pray over them as we close our time today?
Man, thank you, Todd, thank you, Dan, and
it's been great having you, Wade.
What a great way to end. So let's pray. Hey, Father, you are good, and you made all things good. And matter of fact, in your Hebrew, it says you made it tov, which is good for the way that you intended it. It's good. And Father, your intention for our life is that we would have an everlasting life and that we would have a John 10:10 life, a life that's good. Father, that's your intent. And not so much to worry about tomorrow or eternity, which are surely promised when we find you, but to have a great life right now. And Father, the hardest part is letting go of the things that hold us prisoner. Father, the things that we love more than you. It could be money, sex, drugs, alcohol, Father, but probably more so, it's an attitude, it's a posture. Father, that's harder to let go of than physical things. It's a mentality that we think we deserve it or we can grit our teeth and do it. And Father, we just don't see the answer in surrender, but that is the answer. And so if we've got listeners out there, and I do believe that this podcast was for one, because I believe that you came to the cross for one. And for the one listener out there today that's willing, Father, help them to just surrender, to let it go, to open their hand and let you have it, and then to shine a clearer light so that their feet can follow that path. And my own favorite prayer, Lord, I'll finish up with, Lord, you know that the plans I've made today, but I need you to guide my feet. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, my brother.
That's awesome.
Wade, that was fun.
Yeah, it's going to be terrible to go to this next meeting. It's not going to be nearly as fun as this one was. So, love you guys, man. Keep spreading the good word.
Thanks, brother.
All right. We'll see you.
So, man, the writer downers, right? There's a lot of them in there. At the end, I love that. Hey, bring the bottom up to them.
Mm-hmm.
Even going back to the necessary endings cloud stuff, describing, the way of the wise, the fool, the scoffer, whatever, all those pieces when he talks through Proverbs. Sometimes you do have to bring the bottom up to somebody. I love that.
They get to choose their own bottom. They don't always have to crash it and burn it. And you can always go further, by the way. But that was there's some good stuff about, and again, I've had a front row seat for this and watching this transform within the company, literally transitioning from being a business that does ministry to taking a ministry mindset. And just so nobody is deceived here, they have no problem with making money. Okay, this is a financially explosive company right now. I mean, we're talking about probably 5Xing over the last 3 years. Okay, so it's one of the fastest growing home builders in the United States. But transitioning from just it's a different balance sheet.
Yeah.
An eternal balance sheet, not just a financial one.
So the thing that strikes me is they brought up apartment life, which is interesting, but they've got some metrics too, what we kind of talked through, that there is actual economic bottom line benefit to loving and treating your people well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So we talked about apartment life. They basically put chaplains inside of multifamily units because there was always one you can't find, and they basically do community stuff. But what they've seen, they see a 250 basis points IRR increase from what happens with apartment life. 18% points higher in reputation within 6 months, a 1.5% increased occupancy, a 5% increase in retention, 42 average additional lease renewals per year per community, which bottom line equates to about $188,000 of additional revenue per community per year.
All because we chose
community, loving people
to love people well. And by the way, it's counterintuitive because you're literally taking an apartment out of inventory.
Yep.
So you have decreased your inventory, but you're increasing your per unit revenue.
And the same factor is of his idea of great people build great houses. We invest in our people, and it increases. Yeah. Like that idea of treating our people well is the right thing to do, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
But to give an additional increase to why you should do it is it does make it economic sense as well.
Right.
And
this has been a team
work at all the things.
Yeah, this has been very much of a team approach at McGuinn.
Yeah.
So Wade is the face of it, but Nate Gibson, and I could keep going on their leadership team, the way that they have embraced this as the priority. It's just beautiful, man. It's just beautiful. So discipling your employees, how many folks you think freak out when you start talking about that?
With the right ones, not a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At the same time, I think we overcomplicate things.
That's right.
Have an unstructured one-on-one weekly with your people. Oh, I can do that. Right? Like there's, if we make it to be this unattainable something, honoring God in business sounds like a lofty whatever, but at the end of the day, it has to get down to brass tacks on my schedule, stuff that's doing KPI, rocks level to-dos. And again, take the next logical step. Don't overthink it.
Right.
What God calling you to do, listen in and just follow the next thing, right?
Good word. Good word. Hey, I hope you've gotten some great some nuggets out of this conversation today. We'll keep bringing them to you here at Faithonomics. It's all about how How is it that every deal, every dollar, every decision that we have in the business is driven by, focused on the biblical principles of the fact that the business is not yours, it's His. You're a steward. So thanks for joining us today. Look forward to visiting you guys next time.
Like and smash the subscribe button, all the stuff. Share it around.
Smash it,
See you next
crush
time.
it. Yeah. Thanks.
Smash
Dan.
it. We got to say it every time, Dan.
I know.